tremendous looking trophy.
Hi, and welcome to a special Platinum Explosion spoiler cast for Final Fantasy VII Remake. My name's Dylan Blight, and joining me, Ashley Hobley.
Hey Dylan, excited to be here to talk about the first in this series of games, maybe. Probably.
There's going to be at least one more. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake came out, I don't know, weeks ago now. Full review, spoiler-free review, of course, is available on explosionnetwork.com. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I liked it. I definitely don't feel... I feel like I'm actually in a lower end now. I feel so many people talking about it like it's the... You know, I look on Twitter and everyone's like, Game of the Year, one of the greatest games of all time. I'm like, fuck, I really don't feel like that at all. Anyway, I am a fan of the original, big fan of the original game. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Ash has never played the original. This was his first entry into the Final Fantasy VII universe. What are your, if I gave it an 8, what's your, like, and that kind of explains where I sit, how would you sit? Just give everyone.
I'm probably a bit higher than you, probably an 8.5, 9, something like that. I had a really great time. I really enjoyed it, obviously, clearly. And yeah, I guess we'll go through some points through this podcast.
So we're not going to, instead of doing like a 3-hour thing where break down everything and try and discuss it, we're just going to have a bit of a conversational thing. And the main things I want to focus on are the main things that actually stand out to Ash, because this will be a full spoiler cast where we're going to have potential for spoilers from the original game. But I'm not going to go out of my way to like explain here up front everything that happens in the original that could happen in the remake, part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, like I don't want to go unnecessarily into spoilers, but we will have spoilers for that stuff if it comes up, depending on where we kind of go with these key points. And obviously a lot of that is going to lay with the ending of the game. So that's kind of where I just want to start, because we haven't talked about it properly. When you played the final 2 hours or however long it seemed to me section of the game, how do you think, did you enjoy that, and how do you look at it, and how do you think it plays out, and what's all of that mean to you as a new person?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Obviously, I think I was a little bit colored by your review. Like you said, it ends in a weird place. I'm like, oh. Obviously, I'm fighting Shinra president's son, or whatever, on the tower. I'm like, oh, this is where they're going to end it. And it's like, no. Then you fight the friggin' big, huge tank thing. It's like, oh, that's a weird place to end it. No. And then you have a 20, 30-minute minigame where you're driving on the highway. That's where you're going to end it. No. And then it goes full Kingdom Hearts, full-on crazy future, potential future story. I don't know. It was interesting, to say the least. And it definitely felt, to a certain degree, like they just added something in to make it a massive... like it feel like a big boss battle at the end of the game. But I liked it. Obviously, Kingdom Hearts fan, so I'm used to that kind of bizarre, out of nowhere kind of thing, and it looked amazing as well. Like, yeah. So, how did you feel about it? Because obviously that was it. That's one of the many elements that was added into the game.
Yeah. So the ending of the game is, as I said in my review when it posted, I thought it was going to be I thought it was going to be a bigger point of contention than it's actually turned out to be. For the most part, I think I've seen most people quite happy with what the ending means for the franchise. I'm sure there's people upset, but from my Twitter sphere, a lot less people upset than I predicted. So I was wrong on that account, I think.
You were predicting more people would be like, why did I have this fight? It was all a dream.
I just thought more people, well, no, I thought more people would be upset just about what the ending of the game means for not only everything you just played, but also the future. Because by the time you reach the ending of Final Fantasy Remake, it actually kind of changes how you look at the title of the game, which is that everyone was going in wondering why it's not called Final Fantasy Remake Part 1, you know, and there'll be a Part 2, etc., etc., etc. And that's because the way the wording is really remake Final Fantasy. If you turn it around, that this is a remaking of the Final Fantasy VII story, like in a more proper sense, not like a one-for-one remake or a retelling. It is literally a game about remolding the story, because what happens at the end of the game is you literally fight 3 monsters who, if you use the scan ability, whatever the fuck it's called in this game, I can't remember, the one where it lets you Cess, that's it. If you do the Cess, they are the most Kingdom Hearts looking and explain things in the whole game. They literally kind of look like heartless monsters, but each one says that they're a fate of this or a fate of that or whatever, and they've all got stories, and they all fight with specific harbingers of fate, and each one is supposed to be like a different version of different characters in the game, especially if you read their kind of bios. One's like fighting with a buster sword, and another one's fighting with this. Like, this supposed to be kind of, it's implying they're sort of, you're fighting yourself against fate kind of thing. And what ends up happening at the end of the game is you somehow and I don't know how it works, but you somehow destroy fate, alter time and fate, and the game ends with the message of the unknown journey will continue. And it's called the unknown journey because it's now literally unknown, because they have changed what is going to happen, which means that anything that happened in the original may or may not happen from now on, including the one key thing that everyone who's played Final Fantasy VII knows and talks about as one of the most shocking things to ever happen in gaming, which is, of course, Aerith's death. That is the number one thing that people... that was the number one thing that everyone... everyone, when they talk about Final Fantasy VII, it's either like Sephiroth, the one-winged angel piece of music, which is one of the most epic pieces of music in gaming, or it's like Aerith's death. These I feel like are the 3 kind of key factors. So whether or not that's going to happen now is completely up in the air, and they really want you to know that everyone's sort of on even playing ground, I feel like, coming into the next game, because the unknown journey, like it's the key text, the unknown journey will continue, not the known journey. You came into Final Fantasy VII Remake thinking you were on the known journey. Like, returning players are on, they're like, we know what's happening. And the game does a good job at, for the first couple hours, being like, one for one, like it's very, and then slowly as the game continues, they're like, here's something new. Here's a little bit more something new. And the further you get towards the end of the game, the more new shit they start throwing at you, to the point that the end of the game is literally just all new shit. And then it says, and guess what? We're now on a completely new path here, and you don't know. You've played Final Fantasy VII 50 times before. Good for you. We're on the unknown journey. You don't know what the fuck's happening. The key point of contention I thought people would have, and I have seen threads about it, and people kind of arguing about what it means and what it does not mean, is right at the end of the game, where our cast of heroes are walking off that cliffside towards the unknown journey or whatever. They have the character, which I don't think they ever name in the game, but for people who know the game will know who it is, which is Zack.
It's Zack, I had the subtitles on, so his name showed up in the subtitles.
But no one says it right in the whole game.
No one says it, no.
Yeah, like no one mentions it. But you have Zack kind of pass our heroes, and you have Zack come in, and he's overlooking Midgar. Now, I've seen lots of people arguing online about what this means, and I have my own theory, and people have their own theories and whatever. But the key thing that a lot of people are upset about is the cutscene that plays out prior to that, where you see Zack fight a shit ton of Shinra soldiers. That's pretty much one-for-one recreation of a cutscene that happens in Crisis Core, which is the prequel Final Fantasy VII game that was available on PSP. That game ends with Zack fighting those whole bunch of dudes, and then he thinks he's good, and he like goes over and he talks to Cloud, and he goes to help him up. And then there's one Shinra soldier left that he didn't realize, and they shoot Zack in the back and kill Zack. And then that's where Zack dies. So people are upset and theorizing that the change could also imply that Zack is now alive. However, I don't think that's what it's implying at all, because I just don't think that makes sense, because now we're getting into like proper potential. If you care about part 2 spoilers, this is, if you're like, yeah, I knew Aerith dies. Well, now we're getting into like,
well, no, we're still theorizing to a degree, but
I'm spoiling stuff that is OG stuff that is mentioned in this remake, but never explained, is what I'm getting into now. So there is a scene in Remake where there is a conversation between Aerith and Cloud, where Aerith asks if Cloud had any friends or anyone like that. And she begins asking a lot of questions about soldier people. And this is because Zack is Aerith's boyfriend. That's who Zack was to Aerith. And the reason that Aerith is presumably somewhat initially attracted to Cloud is because Cloud is dressed like Zack. Like it's another soldier person, what have you, so on and so forth. So, but the key important factor for Final Fantasy VII storyline is Zack dies. Zack doesn't come back. So Aerith is alone. Aerith meets Cloud. Rest is history. So if Zack is alive and comes back to Midgar with Cloud, doesn't work. They maybe Cloud, I don't know. And the other important factor for this, and reason why I don't think Zack could be alive, is because, once again, I'm not giving any more warnings. Whatever. We're here, you're listening, you're not listening. Cloud is in a state of shock. I don't know how to put it. When Zack dies in front of him, Cloud's mind gets so upset and tortured by watching his friend die that he actually takes on his memories and thinks that he's Zack. So Cloud was never actually Soldier First Class. Zack was Soldier First Class. Cloud was a goon, like a grunt. That's the highest class he ever got to in the army. He never actually got to a higher level. He was never a dude that carried around a buster blade. That was Zack. However, when Zack dies, Cloud's mind just literally sort of tries to protect itself from a state of psychological shock, I guess. And he takes on the persona and he actually melds his memories with Zack's memories. So again, could Zack be alive at the end of the game? No, because then if he's alive, then Cloud doesn't think he's Zack and he doesn't have the memories, and then literally everything that happens doesn't make any fucking sense.
I don't know if you know this, but this is a remake, so they could have rewritten Cloud's backstory.
No.
But
no, because they hint at it in the game anyway. When you're in the thing with Hojo, and he's like, you're not even like he begins hinting at knowing that Cloud's not actually a soldier, and that's because Hojo experimented on Cloud. He knows.
Yeah,
him.
So they could have experimented on him and put other things into his head. Who was the person at the end of the game inside the orphanage that they cut to?
Oh, Biggs. No, not the other one. Wedge.
No, okay, it was
Biggs.
the other one.
That was Biggs.
Wedge. Biggs, yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if that was Biggs or it could have been Zack, but
no, it's Biggs. No, so a lot of what's shown in that kind of final sweep through moment thing is a lot of signs that are supposed to show you that you're in a new timeline now. And there are two key ones that stood out to me, although I haven't rewatched that clip and I haven't even read Reddit theories to see if people broke it down. But there are the two that stand out to me that prove we're on a new timeline. One, Wedge is supposed to die. He dies in the original game. He's dead. He's dead as a door now. In this game, you see him die, or you see what you assume to be him dying. You know, you're supposed to be like, he's dead. Jesse's dead. The only one who's alive is Wedge, and Biggs is the one who died. Sorry, I'm getting all fucking names confused. So they show you him to show you that he's alive, which means that's a change in that's a ripple from the original game. Another key thing that same video clip has happened just moments before the camera pans into the hospital is a flyer kind of floats and lands in front of the camera for a hot second, and it's of the dog that the symbol they would paint underground to like lead the way.
Oh yeah, what's his name?
I can't remember what the actual name of the thing was.
Yeah,
no, but in the original game, in the original remake timeline, you'll be walking through the undergrounds, and Barrett explains the dog and what have you, and it's a little
propaganda thing. Yeah,
propaganda thing, and it's a like a sausage dog, right? You know, what's the official name? I don't know. I can't remember, but it's a sausage dog. When the flyer floats in front of the camera, it's the same dog. Well, it's supposed to be it's the same dog, but it's a different kind of dog. It's now a corgi. So dog is different type. But they purposely have this. They purposely have this flyer stop in front of the camera for a second, 2 seconds, you know, kind of thing, to make sure you see it. And once again, you may not notice this because you just kind of, especially if you're finishing the game for the first time and you're kind of focused on other things or just wrapped up in the emotional extravagance of everything happening. But yeah, it's supposed to be subtle symbol. Here are all these subtle little changes in the timeline to show you that we are not in the same timeline that you was playing in either the original Final Fantasy or even the timeline that you was just playing in the remake Final Fantasy. Like here are subtle changes. And I think the flyer one's a good one, like a good example of, to be like, yeah, well, it's a different type of dog, you know, like subtle little things, which they always do in sci-fi and shows like that, you know, like subtle changes to things to show.
Yeah. The dog's name's Stamp.
Stamp, that's it. There you go. So yeah, we're in a new timeline is the key factor. And I guess that excites and does not excite some people. The other major thing here worth discussing, and as I said, we're going to spend most of this thing talking about the end of the game because that's just how it works. But the other thing worth discussing, of course, is Sephiroth. And the Sephiroth thing, I don't know how it works, and I can't work it out, and maybe I'm not supposed to work it out, and obviously, you know, question for the next game type scenario, but the game sort of implies that either this is the Sephiroth at the end of the game is like from the future, or he's a Sephiroth that is aware of his own future in some way or fashion, because he actually wants to change the timeline. That's the weird thing about this game. The weird and interesting thing about this game is that throughout the entire time you're playing it, obviously you think the main enemy is Shinra, because a lot of the first section of Final Fantasy VII, even the original, it's like go up there, fight them, you know, like Sephiroth doesn't show up until Sephiroth in the original game does not show up until you're escaping the Shinra Tower building. All right, you have never seen him, you've never heard of him. Or there's been slight mentions at that point, but like, who the fuck is Sephiroth? No one cares. This game does a lot of weird things where they constantly have Cloud seeing flashbacks and images and whatever of Sephiroth. But Sephiroth's goal in this game is to change the timeline. Like, that's what he's trying to do. And the Whispers of Fate are constantly trying to correct. And to the point that there's several things that Sephiroth does, which to me, looking back, just feel like him testing the waters. And one of those is when he sticks his, I can't remember the name of his actual sword. It's got an official name, whatever it is. But he sticks his sword through Barrett and kills Barrett, quote unquote kills Barrett. But then the Whispers of Fate stop it, because that's not what happens in the original. So they have to save him, you know? There are key things like that. And Sephiroth would know that if it's a version of him from the future or a version of him who's just being able to get the foresight to know what happens, kind of thing. So he sticks a knife in. Barrett's dead. Barrett doesn't die because the Whispers of Fate has to save him. But then by the time you get to the end of the game, in a weird kind of twist of events, you and Sephiroth actually are fighting for the same thing, which is to destroy the Whispers of Fate and change what happens, which I also find quite weird because when you're in that final fight with the three small whisper things and the big harbinger of fate or whatever the fuck, the Kingdom Hearts fight, there's moments after you kill or damage them enough or whatever where certain characters will get these images. And all of these images are from things that happen in the original game. Like the first image, I think, is Red 13 getting an image. And what he sees is literally the end of the game. So Final Fantasy VII, originally, if you play the original game, it ends with a cutscene that takes place like 1,000 years into the future. And it shows how the Earth has all grown a bunch of green back and you've saved the planet. And Red 13 species, his species continues to live, and it ends with an over cliff shot of Midgar, and it's like overgrown by weeds and grass now. It's like you've saved the planet. That's how the game ends. So that's the clip he sees. There's another clip you see where you see a sphere ball or whatever the fuck, I can't materia ball, sorry. That's where Aerith dies. That's what that was an image of. And then I can't remember what the third one was, but there was a third one. Either way, all of these images that the characters are getting are from what their fate is. It's what the future holds for them all. And for whatever reason, they all decide that they're not going to let fate decide for them, and they're going to destroy fate and change it and do what they want. But I don't really understand why they want to do that, because that's also what Sephiroth wants to do. Like, I don't really understand what their process is, of them being like, these fucking whisper ghost things have been pissing us off the last week.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they get played in some form of, in some ways, by Sephiroth.
I mean, maybe it's all just part of his big plan. Because Red's fate looked pretty good, you know, running around peacefully with another abomination. Yeah. So my understanding is Sephiroth doesn't show up till later, past the original point of where the game is set in the original. Is that correct?
Yes, and I'll put
he didn't show up as in Visions previous.
No. So the reason he shows up in Visions is because I was about to give a warning again, but no, we're not. I've gave the fucking warning. Is because in the original game, and that's the same for this game, although they never explain it, but as someone who's played it, obviously I can pick up on hints they give towards stuff. So when Hojo experiments on Cloud and he experiments on Zack, at a time prior to the start of Final Fantasy VII. Once again, I'm trying not to say too much, but only what's kind of necessary. Hojo experiments on them, and he ends up putting in Sephiroth cells to both of them as an experimentation, because Sephiroth is like this perfect warrior, and he's trying to see if he can replicate, sort of thing. So what ends up happening is that Cloud, in the original game, he's not actually in control of his own actions for a lot of it, and he doesn't even realize, and he's actually being controlled by Sephiroth. So to me, playing Remake, the key scene that explains this, or hints at this in the game, is there's, after you save Red 13, after you save Aerith out of Hojo's lab, they have a scene where Cloud sees Sephiroth off in the distance. He sees the feather dropping from above, and he starts walking towards the elevator, kind of out of body experience where he can't control himself. So all of that, to me, hints towards Cloud being under the influence of Sephiroth, which is what happens in the original game. So, because Sephiroth, Final Fantasy VII is a weird fucking game. It's hard to explain. Sephiroth in the original game, it's you remember in Remake, right? I'm trying to make this make sense.
Yeah.
In Remake, do you remember these weird dudes wandering around zombie bodies with numbers? And the game never explains what the fuck is up with them at all. You know?
No.
One next door, pops into another one in town, whatever. So these are all of those bodies are who Cloud is seeing as Sephiroth. They are all experimentations of... Actually, no, the game does explain it. Right at the end, it gives you enough of a hint that you can put together the pieces. All of these bodies are failed Sephiroth experiments, like Hojo lab clone type Sephiroth shit.
Okay.
Because Sephiroth is dead. That's the thing. Sephiroth is dead as doorknob. He isn't actually alive. And Cloud says that several times in Remake. He says Sephiroth is dead, but he's still seeing him. And Cloud's seeing him because all of these failed clone experiment things are wandering around and they have Sephiroth genes in them, and Cloud has Sephiroth genes in them. And then Sephiroth, who is Sephiroth is dead. However, he is alive in the waves of the universe. Like, he's still able to connect to these people who have his genes in them.
His body is dead, but his consciousness is still...
Yeah, basically that's a good way to go about it. Yeah, but I just remember towards the end of the game, top of Shinra building, Cloud follows what he thinks Sephiroth up to the top, and then who drops off the side of a building? One of those fucking failed experiments. That's the only time the game full on shows you, hey, that Sephiroth was actually just this, and it's all just a hallucination type thing. And the other thing the remake does to kind of explain hallucinogenic shit is a big part of the game, is that boss fight in that room where you're fighting Genova, which is just a big fucked up hallucination. You know, you fight that giant Genova monster thing. It changes into a giant room where it's got like tentacles sprouting out of the room, out of the floor, and all that shit. Sort of shit. No, that's real. You know, that's all some fucked up shit. So mind shit. There's lots of mind shit happening in the Final Fantasy thing. So, but I mean, to explain, I guess, the first disc in a way that kind of makes more sense here. The plot, the pseudo plot of the first disc of Final Fantasy VII, of which there are 3 discs in the PS1, was that Sephiroth, using these controlled body things, and the main Sephiroth body that ends up escaping is actually the Genova body. See, I'm trying to test my knowledge as well because I don't have the Wikipedia page open. The Genova body that's in Shinra building, which in Remake you see him steal himself. There's a scene where you think you see Sephiroth taking this Genova body. And Cloud and Tifa and Aerith and everyone also note that this giant test tube thing has been broken into and Genova is missing. Genova is an alien. It's an alien that crashed into Earth many, many years ago. It's up to line. It's the same sort of plot line as explaining what Aerith's species is as a ancient. Similar sort of shit. So, and the Genova cells is what Hojo experiments a lot with. And he used to experiment on Sephiroth. And Sephiroth isn't actually a real person. It's more like a person made from Genova cells. He's an experiment. And he doesn't realize that for a lot of his life. And the point that sends Sephiroth off the deep end and turns him into a bad guy is when he learns that he's actually an experiment. He's not actually a quote-unquote real person. He's a created being. At that point, he decides that Genova must be his mother and he must reunite with it and save the universe or some fucking, messed up bad guy thing that he has happen. So the Sephiroth you see... In the original game, the Sephiroth you see wandering around the planet doing bad things for the majority of the first part of the game is the Genova body that's been taken over by Sephiroth's consciousness. But it's not actually Sephiroth's body, although that does eventually come back later in the game. But for a lot of the game, it's just Sephiroth consciously taking on another part of her body. This game's so fucking confusing. It doesn't even make any goddamn sense for a lot of it. So yeah, all of the remake ones are like the failed clones. Although Genova body did get taken, you see someone take the Genova body somewhere. I don't know what the hell happens to it.
Because Tojo's laughing at the end because it's missing, right?
Yes, he's like, ha ha ha. It's all he thinks it's all making sense and coming together and being his perfect plan or some bullshit like that. But yeah. Anyhow, you got another question, like a key thing that's lead the.
So all the fates and that kind of stuff, that was all in the original as well?
No.
Like all the spirit? No.
So none of the Whispers of Fate is in the original game at all. None of that.
So none of those dust creatures are in the game?
At all. All of that is new.
Okay. All right. Who is the cat creature that you mentioned when we were talking about the game?
Oh, the most random moment in the game, which, by the way, yeah. So there's a moment where they drop Sector 8, 7, whatever it is. I can't remember. 7. They drop Sector 7, and then they cut to the scene of this cat character leaning over, looking down, being like, "Oh no!" But I saw someone on Twitter the other day also tweet and be like, "What the fuck is this character?" And I think it's stupid. I think they shouldn't have it actually included it because it's weird, and I think for people who don't know what the hell that is or what the hell's supposed to be going on, it kind of cuts away from a emotional moment to give fans a, hey, look, here's a character. And it's really weird placement, and it doesn't actually make any sense. But so that's Cat Sith or Kate Sith. I know people say the name differently. It is a robot. It is a robot character which is controlled by, what's his name? Rufus Shinra, the president of Shinra, who you see in the game.
President?
No, the head dude or whatever. The head of the company, but not the actual president. Like, not the one who was killed or his son. No, yes. The other one. You never see him.
Okay.
It's fucking confusing. Anyway, it's a robot. And for some reason, the game decides to cut away and go, hey, original fans of the game, would you like to see the robot character? And I go, no, because I never use the fucking character in the game because it's shit. Get the fuck out of here. That character does not show up until the start of Disc 2, I think, in the original. In a really weird position where everyone's mourning the death of Aerith, and then it wanders up and goes, hey, can I be part of your team?
Hey, I'm New Earth.
So really, it shows up in an equally opportune time in this remake to ruin a potentially emotional moment. It all adds up to make sense. Yeah, there's another on like the cast of characters. That's another interesting thing for going forward, because of course all of OG Final Fantasy games have so many characters, and even with this game, I feel like just it's full. You know, like I cannot imagine adding 1, 2, was it like 4 more? 4? Yeah, like 4 more characters, I think. There's like 7. How many we got? 4? 5, 6? No. Oh, fuck, I can't remember.
What, for your party?
Yeah, for your party. Like, so there's...
I guess technically 5?
Yeah. Well, Red 13 isn't playable, but he is playable in the original, so they would have to make him playable in the sequel.
I suspect he will be... apparently someone hacked it,
yeah.
so you could play as Red, but it was super basic. But yeah.
Yeah.
So the group, it'd be...
If we had to play as Red...
Yes.
That's one person. Kate Sith, that's another person. Yuffie is another person. Vincent Valentine's another person. Sid's another person. So that's 5 people? 5 more people? I don't think I'm missing anyone. Yeah, I think there's like another 5 characters that join your party. That's a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people to switch in between and upgrade stuff for. I think I enjoyed that aspect of the game, like the upgrading the weapons and like material and that kind of stuff. got a bit of a kick out of leveling it up, earning the SP points and stuff. And unlike in your review where you said all the weapons were pretty much the same, I felt like they did have some sort of difference in stats and that kind of thing to make them worth having your own preferences into which one you were going to use for each character.
I think my problem was there was only a slight difference stat-wise, and a lot of them I would use it, learn its key ability, and then switch back to a different weapon because then I could just get the best of its features. You know? Like, the baseball bat has this cool, powerful hit attack, but once you've learnt it, I could switch back to the Buster Blade or something else. I didn't.
To be fair, the baseball bat feels different to all the other ones, so
it feels like a baseball bat. I mean,
it was not great.
No,
but yeah, I mean, at least Barrett's weapons were very different. Are the weapons very similar? Weapon structure in the original. Well,
yeah, there's a lot more though, and also they're just mostly stat changes because obviously, you don't feel the actual.
Obviously, you don't feel it. Yeah,
the game play part of it as much. Like, and a big example of that is one of Barrett's weapons, which I can't remember the name of, becomes a melee one. Like,
yes,
which if you played the original game, if you changed to that, it wouldn't change anything. It would be like, it does more damage. What do I care? Whereas in this game, because you actually control and do the attacks, changing to a melee one was like, this is terrible because I need Barrett to actually be able to stay back and shoot from afar. And it was shit because of that, as far as I'm concerned. I was like, I don't want Barrett up there and close in the combat. I, once again, used it for a little bit, unlocked its ability, and then got the fuck out of there. I wasn't using that anymore. So, yeah, I feel like that was stupid. But, yeah. I want to read Michael sent through his mini review. I want to go over some points that he had in this. I'm not going to read the whole thing because he wrote a decent chunks here, but going over it, he says it took him a few hours to finally accept its wavering tone of Cloud's super serious, hard-hearted murk. Barrett's eco-warrior Gus to win him over, and of course Jesse and Aerith's warm-hearted approach. By the way, should shout out Jesse, best character in the game.
So good.
And
why do they bring Biggs back yet they kill Jesse?
Yeah, that's the one most disappointing thing. And the character that they changed the most, I definitely feel is like, I mean, you could say all three of them, like Wedge, Biggs, Jesse, but Jesse in the original, I feel like got the least amount of lines compared to even Wedge and Biggs. So seeing her change in this
just
is
a sign of the times.
Yeah, it's great. I'll say seeing people complain online, I'm like, what? She's just out trying to get laid. What's wrong?
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this game. A lot of people with like unbuttoned shirts. Lot of stuff. You do this and we'll get back around to it.
It says, I don't envy the task of walking the tightrope of adhering to beloved characters and popular moments of the game's opening hours and leaving the game open to demographics who know modern Square Enix, who had never played the first one. Then points out that he liked the graphics and all these sorts of things, but then I found his negatives most interesting because at the end here, he points out he would only give it a 7, which I'm like, damn, that's on like the real low end. I feel low at an 8 compared to most people, so a 7 is definitely quite right. He says then there's combat. He played on filthy casual mode and he's more than happy just to customize materia and jump from character to character, doing their best to fill up the ATB bars and healing them. He only got one game over in the whole game. How many times do you reckon you died and where was it most?
Oh, so many places.
Really?
I don't know if I mentioned it on a podcast, but Hell House in the Corneo Cup or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Fuck that house. That was terrible. That was brutal.
It's supposed to be brutal, I guess, but so the one fight that took me the most times, I died twice to the fight against what the fuck is his name? On the rooftop, anyway. The president's son. Forgetting his name. But I
That
died.
took a couple of times.
Yeah, I died twice there.
And then the whisper thing. I don't know if I accidentally did something with the save or not, but when I lost that, I had to go all the way back to the start of going through the portal.
What?
Yeah.
That's weird.
I might have just hit something wrong. Like accidentally went to one of the other options, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
That was frustrating.
All that fight and then even the Sephiroth fight, I thought was.
Yeah, that took a while.
I thought they were easy, just pretty straightforward. I think the thing about the fight on the rooftop that took me longer is because it was the only fight where I felt like it required you to kind of block and parry stuff. Or the only other fight like that, I guess, is that I can think of fighting Roof. Oh my god, everyone's names I can't remember. Reno, thank you. Reno the first time in Eris's church. I did die once to that. I died the first time, and then I was like, oh wait, I'm gonna try and actually not button spam, and you got to actually parry and block this dude. So it's weird. Sometimes the game's bosses were just use the right spell and you'll win, and then other times, especially if it was just Cloud 1v1, it was, hey, do you like to block and parry? Treat this game like it's a Souls game now. So yeah, but depends on the characters. I think any of the boss fights where there was multiple characters, I wasn't really struggling as much because I had, I don't know. If Arif's there, I just press pray all day. I don't know. Like, it doesn't cost MP. I just heal for days. Easy stuff. So, yeah, no. Boss battles, blah, 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 where the fuck was I at here? He complains about the amount of mini bosses. I don't think there was too many mini bosses that I complained about. Although the one mini boss I actually thought was shit was that one that was talking about before the last bike/car thing right before the end of the game. That fight. Don't know why that was necessary. That seemed completely
frustrating,
stupid, and unnecessary. And I didn't like that one at all. I did, however, like the original bike fight versus the other bike dude, which is a new character, by the way. He's not in the original at all. So
I was about to ask you.
Yeah, no, he's brand
that
new.
whole section, I assume, is like new.
Yes, there is a bike scene when you escape and a mini game in the original when you escape Shinra Building. However, it's nothing like.
Not like it was in this.
No, not at all. No mini giant mini boss mini game thing happening. He says, I don't want to be a fan who classic theme. Yeah, it talks about loving the music, of course, is great. The last act of the game follows the beats of the game mostly, but its last chapter attempts to give an ending, yet tease what's to come with the future games and does a narrative twister and meta commentary to essentially say, expect the unexpected. He says, I hope that Square Enix will continue to walk that tightrope and give fans new fans and old a journey they will never forget. 7 out of 10. Sounds like he was less impressed with the ending stuff as some players may or may not be. I think that, and a lot of that, I guess, comes down to how much you go in wanting it to just be a straight up remake of the original potentially, or what you're expecting. And at the same time, that's not really your fault if you do, because they did market it as, hey, it's a remake.
Retelling the original.
We're telling the original game story. Do you want to get back to the Final Fantasy VII Remake sexiness? Is that what you wanted to go back
to? What was that? The Don Corneo storyline, I guess. It was weird.
So good.
It went directions.
Yeah.
With the Honeybee Lounge in particular, I've seen a popular thing that's shown up on Twitter and that kind of thing recently.
That was one part of the game I was worried about, because it's kind of sort of got a lot of transphobic sort of stuff about it in the original, or like subtle sort of transphobic language, or the way they go about doing all of that. I think the remake fixes a lot of that, and the only weird part that remains is the only part that really stood out to me, I guess, is when you go inside. There's lots of language that's kind of just odd, but it's a whole weird scene to try and fix from the original. And then also in the original, it's kind of implied that Don Corleone was going to just straight up rapes the girls. Like they pretty much just like, oh yeah. That's what happens here.
Well, yeah, that was the undertone I understood.
Yeah, I mean, they still give the undertone, but I think I can't remember the wording, but it was a lot more just aggressive with how they present and go about it. Whereas in this one, they give you the undertone that that's what's happening, but not actually go super aggressive with it. But with the whole honeybee and stuff, I thought that stuff was great. Like in that whole dance scene, the mini game. I'm not saying they should rip off Persona, but Final Fantasy VII Dancing All Night would be is potentially
a hot seller.
Yeah, hot seller. I'd fucking buy it. I had fun. I thought this was great. Yeah, it's a great scene.
Yeah, it's interesting. A small thing I noted there was obviously you walk towards the Honeybee Lounge and you hear all the guys like making comments about Aerith in her dress, but then you come back as Cloud and then it's all directed at you, which was weird.
Yeah, they're all hey hot stuff, hey baby, all this sort of stuff. It is weird. And I'm like, I don't know if I take this good or bad. I'm like, is this meta commentary where they're like, hey guys playing this game, this is what it's like to be
sexist.
Yeah, this is what it's like to be a girl walking down the streets now. Like, what's the weird commentary? Is it just like, or is it just straight up just jokes? Like, look, mate, look, she's hot. He. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, none of it bothered me too much. But I mean, if people, from what I've seen online, from the few people I've seen online who went in as trans people to play it, most of them that I follow have been like, nah, that's fine. Like, they went in expecting it to either be worse or at least as bad as original, and they were like, it's probably as good as you could. It's probably as good as you could fix it without completely changing the whole idea that happens in the original game. Yeah, but that's always one of the key sequences from the first section of the game. Anyway, that stands out to anyone. Is the whole Don Corleone section of the game. So
yeah,
you couldn't change it too much. Even though they changed you go about it.
Yeah.
In the original, you basically like go around. You're like, hey, can I have this item from you? Can I have this item from you? This item from you. They changed the structure of how you get there, but the general idea of it is the same.
Yeah. So how much was that sidekick story with the guy with the cap? Was that in the original?
Guy with the cap.
Corneo's sidekick who betrays him.
Oh no, not that I recall. No, not at all.
No, that's original.
Brand new. Yeah.
Like what percentage of these side quests within this game are like totally new?
All of them. There's no side missions in the original. Like if there's side tasks, they're just like really quick kind of things that would reward you with an item or a weapon. It's like, hey, talk to this person, like I wouldn't even call them side quests. So yeah, all of that's new, obviously, because people expect more post-game replayability. I don't know what to do. This sort of stuff. And in the original, it was so just, of course, you had 3 discs, massive game to play, fucking go for it. And then when you reach the end of the original after playing it for 100 hours or whatever, you had secret bosses and these sorts of things to do, or the aim was always to get everyone's ultimate weapons and fully max them out. And to get everyone's ultimate weapons requires a lot of work and items and this sort of shit you have to do. So that was kind of the post-game material in the original. But yeah, because this is part 1, I guess they're like, but add on some side quests. And I mean, I didn't hate the side quests, but they purposely obviously added in at certain chapters to kind of either pad it out or at least give people the option to take a break from the story beat, from the direct path of what they're doing, because you literally just reach the end of a chapter or start of a chapter and it's like, hey, things were just happening and we're going to go over there, but hey, would you like to take some side quests first and do them now, do some XP, potentially help some people? And it's also really weird because you can miss some, like I think it's in chapter 13 or 14, whatever one it is. Yeah, because I reached the end of the game. I did all the side quests. I'm like, where the fuck's my trophy? And then when the game was out and I got Google and I found out that in that last chapter where the side quests are available, if you do this one, it locks out this one. If you do this one, it locks out this one. So then you got to replay that chapter and choose the opposite side quests so you can do all the side quests.
That's bullshit.
Come on, what are you doing? Get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Anything else that comes to mind that we should talk about? Main.
No, I think we've hit pretty much everything. It definitely feel like all the characters were more fleshed out than they probably were in the original game. Like relationships and backstories and that kind of thing. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, 100%. The best thing about this game is that it fleshes out and gives you more time with these characters. The main ones and the side ones, like we're talking about Jesse and Biggs and Wedge and all these other characters. Like it helps you build a relationship with them and care more when they die. Is the major thing I took away from this game. You know, when Sector 7 falls, it's a lot more emotional in this game, I think, than the original, because you've spent more time there. You've spent more time in the slums. You've spent more time with these characters. And then when it actually happens, it's a lot sadder, I think. Because in the original, it's, I don't know, like a couple hours into the game and okay, whatever. You know, like it's supposed to be sad, like it's a sad moment or whatever, but like whatever. I didn't know half these people. I had no relationships with them. And they spend more time with even people like building Barrett and Marlene's relationship in this compared to the original. So then it helps you understand Barrett more as a character, whereas they didn't do that in the original either. In the original, it's just like Marlene's there, but they don't give you the time and moments that they do in this one to help build him the way they do in this. And in the original, they're just like, hey, Marlene's a person, but also we're just going to make Barrett yell and scream for fucking literally half the game, and then eventually reveal he has a soft side. So definitely lots of improvements on that front. And I mean, there's still lots to learn about these characters, especially if you aren't listening to this and listening to me spoil stuff, and or B, not looking them up or these sorts of things, because it's like,
or licking them up,
licking them up, whatever works for you. Cloud, in just thinking about what's shown to you in Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? Cloud, they do lots of teasing about his past, who he is, his memories, his past relationships to like Tifa. What the fuck? Like, there's so many threads that this game doesn't even pull on or barely touches. And in a lot of ways, the game doesn't explain anything about Cloud. All it does is just go soldier, first class, new Tifa when he was a kid, apparently, soldier, first class. And then when you get to the end of the game, instead of explaining more about any of these things, it goes, and Hojo's hinting that he might have some fucked up secrets going on here. What's going on? You know, like, ooh, did he know Sephiroth? Like, it literally explains nothing. Tifa is probably just the most open shut case out of the game. However, again, she has lots of stuff that you don't know about her by the time you reach this one, including what was her and Cloud's deal as growing up. Like, what's the history there? Barrett has heaps to be explained, and I'm not going to give away this because it seems unnecessary to spoil, but there is a story behind the machine gun arm, in case anyone is wondering. Like, how did that happen?
Oh.
Why did that happen? The game does actually explain that. It has a... you do get to find out why. It's not just, hey, it's a weird world. People get machine gun arms. No, there's a story there for that. Red 13. You will learn more about him, his history, and also his his species and all those sorts of things. And of course, Aerith is a enigma, because in the original, you honestly don't learn much more than... I feel like in this remake, you actually know more about Aerith than you did in the original. Because, and this is mainly due to that one cutscene where when you're in the Shinra Tower, and it does the... teaches you all about the Ancient Ones, that little cool VR room thing they go in, or whatever it is, the full-scale thing where they're watching everything happening around them. It's like, hey... people here and whatever else, and we're going to put together this cutscene that basically helps put coal on the theory that Final Fantasy X is actually a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, and that's a thing that exists. That tells you more about her, and ancients than the original kind of ever did, unless you like looked for in-game, what would you call it? Like Intel books type thing, and like read up more, like outside the straight narrative. It doesn't tell you that much about her, so yeah, you definitely get more information in this. But everyone,
here's the most important question: was this version of the Moogle in the original game, or is this a crazy idea they've come up with this one?
What, the Chocobo and the Moogle thing, or
no, the kid dressed as
the kid dressed as the Moogle. I don't fully remember, but it sounds like something that probably was or could have been. Because Final Fantasy VII, it was always, depending on which Final Fantasy game you play, it's weird. Because some Final Fantasy games, they do it where in that universe, Moogles are there and they're everywhere, and you'll see heaps of them. And then some of the Final Fantasy games, Moogles are rare or extinct, and people dress up as them or this sort of thing. So it sounds like something that could have been in the original, I think. Okay. However, Moogles are in the original Final Fantasy VII, so like there's no.
Well, yeah, you summon them with Fat Chocobo.
Yeah,
Great Edition.
But I want to see a real one in the wild,
and with Chocobo.
You know, like because in most Final Fantasy games they were, or in several of them, they're like save points kind of thing, or shops, which is how they work in Kingdom Hearts, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Shops? I don't remember. I said that with such a...
Sounds right, yeah.
I really was not sure of myself at all. Yeah. I was like, and they're in the game. They're in Kingdom Hearts. They're a thing that exists. Yeah. Well, I'll do it, I think. Unless you got anything else.
I guess what are your expectations for...
I have none.
Final Fantasy VII Remaker.
Yeah, I've none, honestly. Because it's the unknown journey now, Ash. You know?
Yeah.
That's the unknown journey. I don't know where we're going. Don't know what we're doing. I guess the key question I would ask anyone else like myself who's played the original is, do you care if Aerith dies or not? And I'm honestly not sure. I feel like I don't want her to die because I really enjoy her as a character. And I think that's also a hot take because I see a lot of people complain about her being too whimsical, floaty or whatever, which I'm like, I don't know. I don't mind her. She's just, you know, she's like a hippie girl. I don't know. Like she's a flower girl, literally. So whatever. But I enjoy her as a character. So it's like, do I want her to die? No. Do I think she needs to die to make Final Fantasy VII be Final Fantasy VII? No. I mean, so yeah, honestly, I don't know. I just want a good game. I don't know where the fuck it's going now though. I would like for it to still hit similar story beats and also potentially visit some of the more popular locations from the original. But at this stage, if they're saying it's an unknown journey, I'm just open for it to being whatever the fuck. But I definitely want to go to the Golden Saucer. The Golden Saucer, for those that don't know, is a place in the original which is just a giant arcade machine. You go there and they've got arcade machines, got all these cool rides and things to do. I want to go there. Sounds great. What are you expecting from the second one then?
Yeah, I guess more. I have no idea. Just more adventures with them. I guess trying to figure out how they're going to stop Sephiroth from changing fate, stealing the Earth. I think it'll be clearer as to what his final motivations are.
Well, I guess I didn't really go over that. Hey, but by the end of the game, you don't really know what Sephiroth's plan is. And I don't even know because if it's a unknown journey, is Sephiroth's goal changed? Sephiroth's goal in the original game was to get the Meteora spell, whatever you want to call it, and then call down Meteor on Earth, which will trigger the planet's guardians, which are basically like giant monsters that are summoned when the planet's in dire need to protect it, and then other stuff happens. I don't want to explain the whole thing, but that's like his initial sort of setup, disc one sort of plan. And they don't hint at any of that in this, so I don't know. Like, none of these things are really mentioned. I mean, yeah, because that's what in the original he summons Meteor, and Aerith ends up dying because as he calls down Meteor, she ends up trying to call down Holy, which is a protection spell to stop it at the same time. And then as she's doing that, he famously drops from the ceiling and shivs a run right for the gut. that's what so she dies protecting the planet, which is I think the key factor why people want her to die in this, because she doesn't just die, she dies in a huge story moment where she dies protecting the planet, and in a lot of ways that becomes, like it fits for her character. She would die to protect the planet type thing. So yeah. Guess depends how they go about it. They could change it though. I mean, I'm open to change. What do I care?
What do you have any idea what Sephiroth meant when he said you've got 7 seconds to save?
No, I don't know.
The fate.
It could be Aerith. Could be something else. I don't know. I thought about that a lot because
could be a hint as to how many games there are.
Yeah, it could be 1 second per game. Maybe. I mean, it's very specific. Obviously, number 7. I feel like the number 7 was picked solely just because it's Final Fantasy VII and whatever. Yeah. But he's obviously hinting at something. But yeah, the only thing I could think of where it's like short amount of time for Cloud to make a difference would be the couple seconds when Sephiroth drops from the fucking rooftop before he kills Aerith. So I don't know. Other than that,
okay,
I don't know. Like,
interesting.
Don't know.
So one last thing, back in the day, you made a request that Crisis Core be part of this remake. Do you suspect? Do you have a better feeling as to whether that may or may not be part of this remake?
No. I don't.
No, because I've seen a lot of people like booting up versions of Crisis Core.
Yeah,
Twitter and that kind of thing.
But see that's I've seen people do it. Lots of tweets about it. I don't really know how and if Crisis Core works if we're in a new timeline. So that's why I don't know how it works now. When I said that originally, obviously I thought direct remake. Why don't you just interweave some of the key parts from that game? Like and make it that sort of way. This one,
so maybe they will just naturally.
Well, I mean,
the
that last scene with Zack, as I said, is pretty much shot for shot Crisis Core. The final fight.
Except he doesn't get shot in the back.
Except for he doesn't get shot in the back. Other than that, the key moments that they could still include from Crisis Core, potentially that would work, is because this part of the remake does introduce the fact that they're more than willing to let you switch characters. And I don't mean in the fight on the go. I mean let you control a whole section of Barrett or Tifa or Aerith or what have you, right? So they could, in the sequel, if they reach the point in the storyline where Cloud starts remembering more of his past, and in the original game, I'm not explaining the whole thing, it's too complicated. In the original game, when Cloud's learning his past, he's there learning it with Tifa, and they're kind of getting their facts straight because Tifa is there when Sephiroth dies and goes fucking topsy-turvy and all these sorts of things. And also Zack's there. So instead of just having it told through sort of pseudo flashbacks with a bunch of text like it did in the original game, they could put you in control of Zack during that sequence and have you play as Zack, which would be interesting as a flashback sort of chapter. That could be a way to not like fully include Crisis Core, but give hints to people who like that game. Here's a scene. We've changed it. It's more Crisis Core-y now than the original way we told this. But yeah, this, and also the other thing with Crisis Core was you could never remake the whole fucking game anyway. It was just a long ass fucking thing where half the missions were pointless, grindy objectives. It's weird. People forget all the nasty parts of the JRPG sometimes, the massive story beats. And a lot of the other massive stuff that people love from that game is all to do with Zack. So unless they start going heavy on flashback to Zack stuff, which I would like, because Zack and Sephiroth were like best friends, and that adds an interesting dynamic to the relationship between him, Sephiroth, and then Cloud, of course. So there's lots that they could do, but just would obviously pad out this game from potentially like 3-4 games to I don't know 5-6, depending on how much flashbacky type stuff they do. Don't know. Anything else?
No.
But
I think the only thing do you suspect the next one will be is you said this game covers like 4 hours. Do you think it will be that fleshed out the next one, or is it going to be a bit closer?
I don't know, because of
course we don't know.
The key question, I think the key question to answer that is, are they going to make the next one a sort of on railsy type thing? Because now that they've opened it up to the more open world section of Final Fantasy VII, where in the original it says, hey, here's a world map. You're supposed to go to this town, but you can kind of just farm here and you can wander around and, you know, whatever. It's like, here's the more open section of the game. Are they actually going to make it like that now? Or are they just going to make it more of a third person Final Fantasy 13? It pretends it's openish, but it's not really. It's just on rails, which is, everyone hated that about 13. So, and I guess the same is with 10. For a lot of Final Fantasy 10, it's just a journey that you're on kind of thing. So depends how they go about it. Which I don't know. When they answer that question, I'll have an answer.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for this. So this has been our spoilerish discussion of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Will we ever talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake ever again? Maybe. Who knows what the future could hold. There could be more things to discuss. There may never be more things to discuss. Who knows? We'll definitely discuss the sequel when they show a trailer for it, though. I guarantee that. So that'll do it. Of course, find all of our Twitters, explosionnetwork.com/Twitter. You can listen to the rest of Platinum Explosion normally on this podcast feed or wherever. And check out my review, spoiler-free, if you want more of my thoughts, explosionnetwork.com for that one as well. And we'll see you in the next thingity. Hey, don't forget you can subscribe to the show wherever you're currently listening, and you can drop a review if you can. Find more great shows like this and more content over at explosionnetwork.com, and please consider supporting us for as little as $1 over on our Ko-fi page by heading to explosionnetwork.com/support. Thanks for listening.